What made Roman emperors never worry about the future? You've been living wrong if you haven't learned this from Epictetus. In the next 3 minutes, you'll understand why Marcus chose silence over arguing. The courtyard is silent tonight. A marble column casts a long shadow beneath the flame of an oil lamp. You walk its edge with your fingertips, the coolness grounding you. Somewhere behind those stone walls, a voice sharp and mocking echoes, not toward a crowd, toward you. And in that moment, every fiber of your body wants to react. A word, a glare, a perfect comeback you'll regret tomorrow. But you stop. You remember Marcus Aurelius writing under candlelight in his tent, surrounded by the chaos of war and political betrayal. His generals questioned his decisions. Senators whispered behind his back. Even his own son, the one meant to carry his legacy, was a disappointment. And yet Marcus never raised his voice in revenge. He wrote, "When someone does wrong, it is because they are mistaken about what is good and evil. Your job is not to punish them, but to understand." That's the first test, not strength, but restraint. Not answering the bark of provocation with a bark of your own. But let's be honest, you might not endure this. Not yet. Because it's easier to strike back than to sit still. Easier to explain yourself than to be misunderstood. Easier to believe you're losing if you don't fight back. But that's not the Stoic path. The Stoic path is silence sharpened to purpose. It's staying still while others pace around you in their own chaos. It's the choice to meet rudeness with a steady gaze, not because you're weak, but because you're becoming untouchable. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To understand this better, let's go back to an ancient lesson from Marcus Aurelius. You're walking through the forum, the late afternoon sun pouring gold over broken statues and bustling stalls. A senator sneers as you pass loud enough for others to hear. It's meant to cut. But you don't flinch. Why? Because in your heart, you've already practiced this moment. You've walked these stones before in your mind. You've rehearsed not the insult, but the silence that follows it. And now in real life, your discipline holds. Stillness is your shield, not suppression, not cowardice, but the deliberate choice to remain centered when others try to pull you off course. Marcus once endured a public mockery from a drunken nobleman at a feast. The man slurred accusations. He questioned the emperor's virtue. Everyone waited for an eruption. But Marcus simply sipped his wine and said nothing. Later he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Scholars still wonder, was this a political move or true Stoicism? Was his silent strategy or self-mastery? But to you, the answer doesn't matter. Because what matters is the lesson: you don't have to respond to every voice that tries to steal your peace. You pause at the edge of the square. The insult hangs in the air like mist. You breathe once, twice, and you walk on. You walk with a quiet confidence now, not loud, not dramatic, just still. There's no rush to respond to the world's noise. You've tasted that power already, the kind that lives in calm breath and a steady gaze. And so the second test presents itself not just enduring an insult, but resisting the need to explain yourself. Someone challenges your integrity. A colleague twists your words. A friend spreads a rumor. The fire rises in your chest. You want to set the record straight. But here's where the Stoic cuts through. If you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that while governing an empire full of betrayal, assassination plots, and false accusations, he could have issued decrees, could have struck back with law sword or exile. but more often he responded with, nothing. Why? Because proving yourself to others is a never-ending trap. It means you're letting them set the terms of your peace. You reflect on this as you pass through a Roman alleyway where even the shadows seem ancient. A woman nearby is arguing furious red-faced at someone who barely glances at her. And you realize, her anger isn't about that person. It's about needing to be heard, to be right to win. And suddenly you're thankful for the quiet inside your own mind. This isn't easy. It never is. It requires the kind of discipline forged over years. To know your value and not sell it for approval. To be silent not because you're weak, but because you've chosen the higher ground. Still, you ask yourself, if someone lies about me, do I just let it go? And Stoicism answers gently. Not every truth must be shouted. Some truths lived well are louder than any defense. Scholars still wonder how Marcus endured so many public attacks without ever launching personal campaigns of revenge. Some say it was strategy. Some say it was apathy. But if you look closely, it was something much deeper, inner clarity. A compass unshaken by the storm. You feel that compass now in your own chest, steady and pointing inward. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your life is your argument. Your character is your reply. And so you move forward, not in haste, not in fear, but with the quiet strength of someone who no longer depends on the noise of others to validate who you are. You walk on. The next morning begins in silence. The city breathes slowly, dew resting gently on marble columns and early footsteps echoing along cobbled streets. You stand still for a moment, remembering last night's restraint. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't fight back. But there's still a quiet tension beneath your ribs. Not regret, just the weight of what you carried without showing it. Now comes a deeper challenge. What do you do after the disrespect? The Stoics never said you must be indifferent to pain. Seneca himself once admitted, "I am not a wise man, nor will I ever be. I am a man who loves wisdom." That is the frame, not perfection, but movement toward clarity. So you reflect. You remember how easy it would have been to lash out. How satisfying in the moment to answer insult with insult, to correct the record, to win. But the moment passes and you remain whole. That's the lesson. Your peace doesn't require their apology. You walk slowly now under carved archways, sunlight spilling between cracks in the stone. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that phrase returns to you like a lantern in a dark corridor. The world wants you to mirror its aggression. But Stoicism teaches you to disrupt that chain, to be the interruption in a pattern of pain, to pause, to breathe, to choose differently. Scholars often question whether this is just passive resistance. They ask, shouldn't there be justice? Shouldn't wrongdoers be confronted? And the answer is yes, but not by abandoning your principles. Stoicism isn't surrender, it's stability. If you act from virtue, not vengeance. You remember the Roman generals Marcus would meet with who bragged about crushing their enemies. And yet in the quiet of his tent, he would write about mercy, about responding with measured stillness, because he knew power without self-mastery is just chaos wearing a crown. You cross a courtyard where the fountain murmurs and you think about your next move. Not reaction, but reflection. Not silence from fear, but silence from strength. So what should you do now? You do what Stoicism always urges: return to your center. Examine your motives. Is this about justice or ego? Are you defending truth or defending pride? Because when you see clearly, you realize the most manipulative trap of disrespect is that it tries to make you like it, tries to turn you bitter, tries to turn you small. But you remain calm. you remain kind. You remember that no insult can shrink your soul unless you hand it the knife. Later that day, the air grows heavier. You overhear someone mocking you again, this time not to your face but within earshot. Not a confrontation, but a performance. Their words are sharpened for an audience. A quiet test of your patience. You inhale. This is where your strength is forged, not in grand declarations, but in the small moments where you choose not to lower yourself. You recall a line from Seneca. It is not that we are given a short life, but we make it short by wasting time. And nothing wastes more of your precious energy than defending your ego in public. You might want to turn and correct them, to tell the truth, to dismantle their pettiness. But you don't. Because you know something they don't. The opinions of the loud don't echo long. What matters is not what they say, but who you become because of it. You pass through the marketplace where voices rise and clash. Romans debating prices, policies, politics. And you remember how Marcus Aurelius would walk among them, not as emperor, but as a man practicing restraint. There were speeches mocking him. There were senators whispering about his weaknesses. But history doesn't remember their noise, it remembers his calm. Still part of you aches. Stoicism never denies that. It doesn't say, feel nothing. It says, feel what's natural, but don't act from it blindly. So you observe your reaction. You witness the sting. But you don't let it hijack your dignity. Here's the hard truth, not all disrespect needs a reply. Some people speak only to provoke. And the most disruptive response is to continue shining without flinching. The fire in you doesn't need to burn them, it only needs to stay lit. Philosophers still debate whether this is denial or discipline. Is walking away always noble or sometimes just avoidance? But you know the difference. If you walk away to preserve your peace, not out of fear, then it's strength. So you walk on. The shadows stretch. The city slows. And in the silence that follows you, there is something steady. You did not give them the satisfaction. You did not bend your character to match their chaos. And in doing so, you've grown not in praise or attention, but in quiet, unshakable power. You sit down beneath the awning of a quiet Roman shop. A low hum carries from the forum, distant and harmless now. But inside your chest, the words still echo, the ones meant to cut you down in front of others. Criticism disguised as humor. Insults dressed up in casual phrasing. You didn't respond. You didn't react. But it lingers. Here's where the Stoic practice deepens, not just in silence, but in inner digestion. You don't ignore the wound, you clean it. You inspect what was said. Was there truth in it, perhaps a little? Then take the lesson and discard the venom. Seneca once wrote, "If you wish to be loved, love. But just as importantly, if you wish to be strong, learn to transform offense into opportunity." This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you decide what becomes of their words, ashes or fuel. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people will misjudge you, not because they see too little, but because they see too much. Your silence unsettles them. Your restraint looks like superiority. Your peace a mirror to their own chaos. So they prod, they provoke. But you've learned a trick from the Stoics, something simple and powerful: don't take it personally. Not because you're better, but because you're free. Free from needing validation. Free from craving retaliation. And especially free from participating in foolish games of one-upmanship. You remember a story about Marcus Aurelius. A man once interrupted his speech in the Senate to mock him. The emperor didn't rebuke him, didn't have him silenced. Instead, he waited, allowed the man to finish, then returned to the topic at hand, as if nothing had happened. That was his reply. That was his answer. and the room knew who had won. Scholars still debate, was this composure a tactic or true virtue? Was Marcus suppressing rage, or had he truly mastered it? It's a fair question. One you must ask yourself too. You stretch your legs. A breeze moves across the plaza. And now you consider what it means to win not arguments, but composure. Not debates, but dominion over your own emotions. Some people spend their entire lives reacting, but not you. You're learning to pause, to step outside the noise and sit in a deeper place. This is where peace lives, not in being untouched, but in being unshaken. You walk along a narrow Roman street, now the stones still damp from last night's rain. The light reflects off them in soft ripples, and in your chest, a thought forms: how much energy have you spent defending your ego? The Stoics would say too much. When someone disrespects you, the temptation to react is immediate. But what if you didn't? What if your silence wasn't surrender but sovereignty? Seneca reminds you it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. And the same applies to respect. If you constantly crave it, demand it, expect it, you are always at the mercy of others withholding it. But if you live in such a way that respect is your shadow, not your pursuit, then even the loudest insult cannot disturb you. A Roman general once remarked of Marcus Aurelius, "He walked among slander as if it were incense, letting it drift past his robes, never grasping at the smoke." That image stays with you, not just because it's poetic, but because it's practical. Ask yourself now, when criticized, do you grasp? Do you try to smother the smoke with words, justifications, explanations, or do you let it drift, knowing it will fade? You sit on a marble bench. An old woman walks by, her head bowed beneath the weight of a woven basket. She does not look up. She does not scold the wind. She simply moves. You realize that's what Stoicism teaches too, not to stop storms, but to walk through them with your head high and your voice steady, even if that voice remains unused. Scholars still argue over whether this kind of restraint is sustainable. Can a person truly live without giving in to the urge for retribution? Or does the repression simply twist inward? But the answer lies not in theory, it lies in practice. It lies in you choosing moment by moment to become the person who doesn't need to win the encounter, because you've already won your own respect. You glance again toward the horizon. The sun begins to break through the morning haze, and inside you something settles. The next time someone calls you out, publicly mocks you, or twists your words in front of others, you'll remember it is not the comment that defines you, but your composure. You will say less, feel more, and stay calm, not because you're weak, but because you've learned this. A storm can only shake what isn't anchored. Now you rise from the bench, the hem of your robe brushing the cold stone, and walk deeper into the city. A commotion brews in the marketplace. A baker shouts at a young boy for knocking over a tray of figs. The boy looks terrified. You pause and watch. This is the moment. Disrespect has found someone else, but your mind instinctively begins weighing the Stoic choice. Seneca once advised, it is not the insult itself that harms you, but your perception of it. And as you observe the baker's flushed face and raised voice, you realize he is not truly angry at the boy. He is angry at something else. Perhaps a sleepless night, a failed delivery, a deeper grief masked by frustration. The Stoic learns to look beyond the immediate sting. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, when someone does you wrong, ask yourself, what kind of pain must they be in to act this way? It sounds noble, maybe even unrealistic, but this practice gives you power. Not over them, but over your own response. You step forward, not to interfere, but to witness. Because sometimes the greatest mastery is not jumping into every conflict, but training your eye to see beneath it. This is where the philosophical debate begins. Is compassion compatible with Stoic detachment? Or does Stoicism demand a cold indifference to others' suffering? Scholars wrestle with this, but you sense that indifference is not the point. Clarity is. Stoicism asks you to separate the behavior from the person, not to excuse it, but to understand it. Because only then can you decide calmly, consciously, what kind of person you wish to be in response. You could yell. You could match rudeness with sarcasm, humiliation with venom. But the boy already looks humiliated enough. The world doesn't need your anger, it needs your restraint. So you let the scene pass. You move on like water flowing around a stone, not breaking it, not pushing it, just gliding past. Later, someone may speak ill of you behind closed doors. They may challenge your ideas in public, but you will remember the boy, the moment, the unnecessary sharpness in the baker's tone. And you will remember just because someone throws fire doesn't mean you must carry the flame. Let them keep it. You walk on a little quieter now, a little stronger. You find your way into a quieter alley away from the commotion. The stone walls echo only your footsteps now. Here the city fades into silence, and in that stillness you hear something else, your own mind. When insulted, your first reaction is often invisible. It's the rush of heat beneath your skin, the clench in your jaw, the quick rebuttal forming on your tongue. But Stoicism urges something radically different. Pause. Let the insult arrive. Let it pass through. Observe the feelings, but do not identify with them. Seneca once asked, "Why should we be angry at the world when it simply follows its nature? If someone slanders you, that says more about them than it ever could about you. Their bitterness, theirs. Their assumptions, theirs. Their cruelty, still theirs. You are not obligated to pick up the dagger they throw. Instead, you learn the second Stoic response to disrespect: observe without absorption. Let others be rude, let them speak falsely, and refuse to let it echo in your heart. You recall the tale of Seneca's exile. Cast out by the Emperor Claudius, he was accused of an affair he did not commit. For years, he was banished not for a crime, but for politics. Most men would rage, scheme, collapse into resentment. But Seneca used his time in exile to write, to reflect, to sharpen his philosophy. His enemies could remove him from the court, but not from his principles. This is the lesson: your dignity is internal. No one else grants it. No one else can take it away. And here lies the question that scholars still ponder. Is this detachment just a defense mechanism? A way to pretend one is unaffected when the wound is real, but what if it isn't pretense? What if it's a deeper mastery, a quiet refusal to let the worst parts of others decide who you will become? You lean against the wall, the stone cool on your back, and let that thought sink in. Yes, some words sting, some glances bruise, but bruises fade. Words dissolve. Only your reaction remains, and that's where the true philosophy lives. So next time disrespect comes, don't meet it head on. Don't bow to it either. Stand still like a tree in a storm. You don't need to say a word. Let your silence say everything. You walk again slower now, lighter. Not because others have changed, but because you have. You follow a narrow path leading to a Roman fountain, its waters clear, steady, and silent. There's something calming about it. A reminder that not all strength is noisy. This is where the third Stoic response begins to bloom: choose your mirror. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Let that echo through your spine. Not to respond in kind, not to imitate the harm, but to become the opposite. Someone disrespects you. They lie. They mock. They try to pull you into their storm. You pause. You examine, and you ask yourself, do I want to reflect their ugliness back at them, or do I want to become something different? Because the truth is, every encounter with disrespect offers you a mirror, but it's you who decides which reflection to keep. When Marcus faced revolts from Avidius Cassius, one of his own generals, he didn't erupt in fury. He didn't scream vengeance. He offered clemency, dignity. He even wept when he heard Cassius had been killed before they could speak. Scholars wonder, was this weakness? Or was it Marcus refusing to let betrayal twist him into bitterness? And that's the deeper question Stoicism always brings forward when you are wronged. Is your instinct to retaliate or to rise? There is power in saying less. But there is even greater power in becoming less like those who provoke you. Modern culture tells you to clap back, to stand your ground, to never let them disrespect you. But that only traps you in cycles of reaction. Stoicism breaks that loop. It says, set your standard higher. Let others play their noisy games while you remain calm, rooted, self-possessed. You walk again. The fountain behind you continues to spill its waters with no concern for who watches. It simply flows. And perhaps that is your example. Don't match energy. Set your own. Not for applause. Not for pride. But because peace is more valuable than winning arguments. The road bends again beneath your feet, and you step into a quieter part of the forum. The air is cooler here. Fewer voices, fewer distractions. Just the sound of your breath, steady and unbroken. You think back to how easy it is to lose yourself in the storm of emotion when disrespected. How instinct demands a reply, sharp, clever, piercing. But Marcus Aurelius reminds you otherwise. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after. Here the fourth Stoic response takes shape: humility over humiliation. Most people respond to public disrespect with wounded pride. They feel exposed. But a Stoic, instead of recoiling, stands open, receptive, even curious. Not because they enjoy being insulted, but because they're not shackled to the illusion of perfection. During the Antonine Plague, Marcus was harshly criticized for remaining in Rome. Some accused him of selfishness, others of negligence. He didn't deny the claims outright. He simply remained in the city, visible, active, writing nightly meditations, not to justify himself, but to remain clear in conscience. Humility in the Stoic sense is not self-degradation, it's self-honesty. So when someone mocks your choices in public, your career, your values, your appearance, you breathe. You let them speak. You ask, is there truth in this? And if there is, you grow. If there isn't, you smile gently and let it pass like a breeze over your skin. Because what if the insult was a gift, a torch that lit a blind spot you never noticed? Scholars debate whether Stoicism's embrace of humility made it less appealing to the ambitious Roman elite. Why admit fault when power is about image? Yet Marcus himself was emperor, and he wrote nightly to remind himself that ego was the true disease. You keep walking your posture unbothered. There's strength in being unimpressed by public theater. Strength in not needing to perform. The person who can look inward in the face of outward ridicule, that is a person who cannot be owned by opinion. Now you turn a corner and find a narrow street lined with fig trees and drying laundry. The world continues as if nothing happened, because in truth, nothing has. Someone said something about you. That's all. The sky didn't crack. The earth didn't shift. Your peace is intact, unless you surrender it. The fifth Stoic response to disrespect is detachment from imagined harm. You recall Epictetus's simple advice. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Words, even cruel ones, are not physical blows. They cannot injure your character unless you let them rewrite who you think you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. And yet, this doesn't mean pretending to enjoy insults or suppressing pain. It means questioning whether the pain is necessary or merely a mental habit. Imagine a Roman senator being mocked by his rival in front of the forum crowd. He can lash back, letting the insult define his next hour, day, week, or he can smile knowingly unaffected because he knows that reputation is borrowed, not earned. Virtue, by contrast, is self-made and cannot be stolen. You've likely been in situations where someone embarrassed you and for days you replayed the moment. But replaying it made it no less real, just more painful. The Stoics invite you to press stop on that loop. Scholars still debate whether this radical detachment dulls a person's passion or creative fire. If nothing touches you, do you still care? Yet the Stoics would say care deeply, but don't let your caring become a chain around your soul. So the next time someone tries to humiliate you, ask, have they harmed me? Or have I added a story to their words? You walk again slower now. You notice the breeze, the weight of your own body, the pulse beneath your fingers. None of it depends on anyone else. You are here. You are whole. You are untouched. The quiet grows deeper. A cart rattles by, pulled by a tired mule, its driver humming something ancient and forgotten. You keep walking, unhurried, more anchored now. The world continues to offer you tests, and you in turn choose your response. Sometimes the most powerful Stoic response to disrespect is no response at all. This is not retreat. This is restraint. Deliberate, dignified restraint. Seneca once wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." You remember moments where your silence disarmed others. When someone expected outrage, your calm became unsettling. You didn't give them the chaos they craved. That's power. Power rooted in discipline. Marcus Aurelius faced political betrayal more than once. Senators who smiled at him in the day plotted against him at night, and yet he rarely lashed out. He absorbed slander as if it were weather. He knew that to rise to every insult was to descend into every argument. Think of arguments you've had. Was the win ever worth the peace you sacrificed? Did proving yourself fix anything long-term, or did it merely entangle you deeper in the web of ego and reaction? The Stoic path isn't passivity, it's measured engagement. You don't pretend that words don't sting. You simply decide whether that sting deserves your energy. Most don't. There's a debate among modern ethicists: is silence a moral dodge? Shouldn't we confront injustice, speak truth, assert ourselves? The Stoics would agree truth matters, but so does intention. Speaking from ego is not the same as speaking from principle, so you weigh your words. You observe your heartbeat. You ask, if I speak now, is it for virtue or for vanity? Sometimes you'll walk away. And in doing so, you'll carry your dignity with you, quietly, powerfully. The night air is cooler now. Lamps flicker on balconies. You hear the soft clink of dishes in a home above. All of life continues, and you stillness within it. A child runs past you, chasing a stray dog down the alley, their laughter echoing in the narrow walls. The moment is light, innocent. And yet your thoughts return to weightier matters: how to stay calm when others try to pull you into the fire of their own turmoil. There's a Stoic answer to this too. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Seneca once posed a reflection to his students. What if you treated anger like a stranger banging at your door in the middle of the night? Would you rush to answer it, or would you first ask, do I even know who sent it? You learn that not every provocation deserves a response. When someone throws a stone of insult, you don't have to bleed. You can instead observe, question, choose. And if you do respond, let it be like a physician, gentle, calm, corrective if necessary, but never cruel. Marcus Aurelius encountered countless detractors, some political rivals, others even his own generals. And what did he do? He often responded with composure or silence or a brief note rooted in principle. He believed that he could not control the words of others, only his use of reason in reply. There's an old philosophical tension worth considering. Should we always forgive or sometimes retaliate? Stoics leaned toward the former not because they were weak, but because retaliation feeds the very ego they sought to master. You remember a time you were baited, perhaps online, perhaps by someone close. The instinct rose in you to clap back. But what did you win, and at what cost? Real strength is not loud. It does not declare itself in anger or volume. It rests in self-command and quiet assurance. So tonight, you turn inward. You let the storm pass without stepping into it. You choose not to be provoked, not because you are unaware, but because you are unshaken. And the night, in turn, rewards you with silence. The streetlights flicker above as you keep walking. A light drizzle begins to fall. You pull your cloak tighter, not in discomfort, but as a gesture of acknowledgement you are still in the world, but you don't have to mirror its every storm. Another insult may come. A cold remark from a colleague, a friend who turns distant, a stranger who misjudges you. It's always easier to respond in kind, to raise your voice, to prove your worth. But that would mean giving them control. Seneca warned against it with the precision of a surgeon. He who is insulted and is moved by the insult is still a slave. The insult is not the issue. The issue is your reaction, and in that there is immense power. In Rome, the Senate could be brutal in its judgments. Seneca, as an advisor to Nero, often had to face accusations, backroom politics, venom disguised as rhetoric. And yet for years, he practiced restraint, not silence out of fear, but of choice. His pen became his reply, his philosophy, his protection. Some scholars argue that such restraint could be dangerous, that injustice must be called out, that silence allows cruelty. But Stoicism doesn't teach silence as surrender, it teaches you to choose when and how to act, rather than react blindly. Sometimes you respond by walking away, other times with a single question. What does this person need that they try to take from me with scorn? And if the answer is attention or control, you deny them that stage. Disrespect is often a mirror held by the weak. It reflects their chaos, not your character. You don't need to smash the mirror. Just stop looking into it, so your steps continue beneath the rain, light tapping above, slow breaths within. You are not unmoved because you don't feel. You are unmoved because you understand. And with understanding, you sleep lighter. You arrive home. The door creaks softly as you close it behind you. Shoes come off your shoulders, drop slightly. The silence is different here, not just quiet, but earned. It's the silence that follows a day where you didn't let others write your story. You walk toward the corner of your room where a candle waits. You light it not for light, but for meaning. The flame dances without agenda, without worry, without any desire to please. And you sit, breathing in, breathing out. One last disrespectful comment may echo faintly in your memory, but it no longer stings. You've met it with stillness, not indifference, but discipline. You've learned, as Epictetus taught, that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And your reaction was chosen, not stolen by impulse. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. You reflect on that. How rare it is for someone to seek truth instead of vindication. And how by doing so, Marcus disarmed those who tried to provoke him. Scholars still wonder, was his restraint truly Stoic clarity, or the necessity of an emperor who couldn't afford to speak freely? But perhaps the answer doesn't matter. What matters is what it gave him: peace amidst chaos, a voice that remained calm while armies marched, and a legacy not of rage, but of reason. Tonight, that legacy sits with you. You've weathered words meant to wound. You've endured what many react to. And now there is quiet. The kind of quiet you don't just stumble into. The kind you build. The kind that lets you rest.